Hello and welcome to Zero Tackle TV. This is the State of Origin Game 1 preview, a Core Stadium, Sydney, Wednesday night, and here to talk about it with me, break it all down, is the chief editor himself at Zero Tackle, Mr. Scott Pryde. How you going, mate?
Good, Phoenix. Looking forward to this. It's going to be a great game Wednesday night.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's just jump straight into it. So some big changes for the Blues under Michael Maguire. What do you reckon? Have they got it right?
Yeah, some huge changes for the Blues. I mean, they come into this series with a new coach. Obviously, Brad Fittler gone, had to happen. An NRL coach, an NRL level coach now for the Blues, and he said he was going to pick an informed team. I think that's what he's tried to do. Obviously, he's been hamstrung by injuries. No Nathan Cleary, no Tom Trbojevic, even Mitchell Moses is out, so he's had to rely on Nicho Hynes in the halves and Jerome Luai's back. But outside of that, he's made some huge calls. Obviously, James Tedesco's been dropped. He's dropped Apisai Coruscant. Some really big calls from Maguire. Will the team do enough to beat Queensland? It really remains to be seen. As I said, all the changes mean that we're going to have a new look Blues side, which had to happen after the last couple of years. The last two series have been a disaster. You listen to James Tedesco in the lead-up. He admitted changes were coming. I'm not sure he thought he was going to get dropped personally as captain, but obviously he was. Moving on from the starting side, you've also got names like Spencer Leniu on the bench. Homolola Kauatu is going to get his Origin debut. Have they done enough to win the series or win game one? As I said, it remains to be seen. But I like what the Blues have done for the most part. They had to get fresh faces in, and that's exactly what's happened.
So speaking of some new faces, you've got Suaalii and Lomax coming in as well for the Blues edge defence. So are they up to the challenge?
Two of the bigger calls from Michael Maguire, obviously, Joseph Suaalii and Zach Lomax in the outside backs there for the Blues. Lomax has been the informed winger in the competition this year. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, his last couple of weeks have been a little under par for where he said in the first sort of 7 or 8 weeks of the season, but he's been outstanding for the most part under Shane Flanagan there. He may not want to play on the wing, but that has been proven beyond all reasonable doubt to be his best position. Hopefully that comes out for the Blues in game one. They're certainly going to need it. He brings height, he brings speed, he brings a wonderful ability under the high ball, which is going to be needed against a very dangerous Queensland side. Suaalii in the centres is the other big one here. I mean, he for mine, he is a winger, but he has played some okay games in the centres there for the Roosters at times over the last 18 months. Obviously, there was plenty of chat around Suaalii and whether he really should be picked, given he's off to rugby union at the end of the year anyway. Michael Maguire made it very clear that he was going to pick the best informed team he could, and he believes Suaalii is in that side. Whether he should be there as centre remains to be seen. I think Queensland have a lot of potential threats in their outside backs. You look at guys like Valentine Holmes, Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow, Murray Taulagi and Xavier Coates, all working off that incredible spine run by sort of Reece Walsh there and Daly Cherry-Evans. So very, very dangerous, and Queensland have a lot of point-scoring ability. I think if Suaalii and Lomax are up to the challenge defensively, it makes a big difference for the Blues. They have to stop Queensland from scoring a lot of points if they're going to be in this game. Whether they're up to the challenge really remains to be seen, but it's a big call from Maguire for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So Origin always brings up some very interesting selection news. So two other names there, Luai and Nicho Hynes. So can they get the job done for New South Wales as well?
Well, I don't think it was going to be anyone's first choice halves pairing. Obviously, the Blues have had a lot of injuries leading into this series. Nathan Cleary, Mitchell Moses, even Adam Reynolds, I think, would have been your third choice halfback, and he's now injured as well. I think most had Cleary joined by Nicho Hynes in their first choice halves, so Hynes was probably going to play anyway. He now has to take responsibility in the number 7 jersey, and it's a big, big step up for a guy who he's been excellent for Cronulla, don't get me wrong. He's won a lot of games single-handedly, but there are doubts over his big game ability. We saw it last week against Penrith, where Cronulla were down heavily early on. And we've seen it, I guess, through Cronulla's finals runs over the last couple of years, where Hynes just sometimes doesn't always play at 100% of his potential in big games. Now, an Origin appearance in that halfback role alongside Jerome Luai and alongside a new-look Blues side, it's going to be a big, big challenge for Hynes. He certainly has the talent to pull it off. It's just where his head's at come the night of Origin 1, and also where his calf's at, because we know he's been battling with a calf injury himself, which, not ideal if you're going to go through your first real Origin training camp, with that injury. Obviously, Jerome Luai has been in excellent form the last couple of weeks. He stood up to play number 7 for Penrith without Nathan Cleary in the side. Obviously, Cleary's injured. There was actually some talk he was going to get the number 7 jersey for the Blues. He'll go back into his more traditional 5'8" role. But don't be surprised to see Hines and Luai sort of interchanging roles a little bit through the game. Both have a kicking game, both have a running game. I think the Blues will try to use that to put Queensland's defence off. Again, it's not the first choice combination for the Blues, but I think they're good enough if they come out and play at their 100% of their potential to match it with this Queensland side.
Yeah, absolutely. So while we're talking about the halves, the series is going to look a little bit different with no Cam Munster. So what job can Tom Dearden do in replacing Munster?
Well, Dearden's got a massive role to play. Obviously handed that number 6 jersey ahead of Ezra Mam. It came down to him and Mam for that number 6 jersey. Munster missing out on Origin is massive for Queensland. Obviously, he's been battling with that groin injury since pre-season, since last year, really. He missed the first couple of weeks of the NRL season, but then came back and was in quite good form, and you have to say was going to be a walk-up starter for the Maroons right up until he redid his groin quite significantly during a Magic round. Dearden probably, in the end, was the right call to get this number 6 jersey ahead of Ezra Mam. Mam is still very raw. Obviously, we saw his performance in the grand final last year where he scored that second half hat-trick, but there's still major questions over his consistency in defence, whereas Dearden is obviously a far better tackler and has runs on the board at this level. He played in the decider in 2022 and got Queensland over the line in that game alongside Cherry Evans. I think the big question is whether Cherry Evans and Dearden work as a halves combination across 3 games. They're quite similar players. Obviously, Mam would have brought a lot more spark to the Queensland side and been a more like-for-like replacement for Munster. But in saying that, as I said, Dearden has a good running game. He's a 5'8" there at North Queensland and has been in good form. So can he replace Munster? No, he's not going to be the same player as Cameron Munster. Queensland will need to adapt their strategies a little bit to get to the same level they were at last year. But can he do the job? He's done it before. No reason he can't this time.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting watch. Obviously, the other big issue for the Maroons is they have a lot of those injuries in the forward pack. I'm thinking, do they have enough to go with the Blues? Do they get their bench right at the selection table? What do you think?
Yeah, well, obviously the Maroons have a heap of injuries in the middle there. No Tino, no Tom Flegler, no Corey Horsburgh. I think there's another one I'm missing there as well. But they've got a lot of injuries out in that middle group. So to see Queensland actually go into the game, I guess, with just the 2 middles on the bench and Jermaine Hopgood and Mo Fotuaika, they're both excellent players but will need to play big roles. I think the surprising thing for me was that they decided to name Selwyn Cobbo on the bench. He for mine was in the starting side as a winger. Murray Talangi's won that jersey ahead of him. Billy Slater's now got to come up with a role for Selwyn Cobbo. And don't get me wrong, Queensland have used players that you just go, they shouldn't be forwards in forward roles previously. You look at Kalen Ponga's done it. You look at Cooper Cronk's done it over the years. So Queensland will find a role for Selwyn Cobbo, and I have no doubt that he will have a good game. He's that sort of player. He'll just get in and do the job. But it does concern me from a Queensland point of view that they are probably one injury away from being really short in the middle. I think during the middle third of the game, they're going to struggle a little bit as well. No disrespect to Hopgood and Fotuaika, but their depth in the forwards is going to be challenged, particularly if one of their edge players needs to come off, either Jaden Sewer or Jeremiah Nanai. The Blues have a big bench. They have a big starting engine room there. Obviously, the Blues didn't go with a genuine utility on the bench. That means they're going to have a lot of firepower through the middle. It'll be short stints. It'll be sharp stints. Which means Queensland do need to find a way to match that intensity throughout the whole 80 minutes. And whether they can do that with a Selwyn Cobbo on the bench really remains to be seen. All those injuries do have the potential to come back and bite Queensland for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit worrying, but on paper, so one of the big differences looks like it's going to be the dummy half rotation. So how important do you think that'll be?
Well, I just touched on it a little bit there. The fact that the Blues haven't named a utility, they've obviously dropped Apisai Coruscant. That we touched on that earlier. That's a big change for Michael Maguire. Really surprising change as well, I think, given Coruscant's probably the best dummy half in the game. Well, he's certainly on par with Harry Grant, who will obviously be playing off the bench for Queensland. That's where the difference is, though. Harry Grant comes off that bench for Queensland. Ben Hunt will soak up all the pressure in the first 20 to 25 minutes. We've seen it before. We know exactly what they're going to do. Once Hunt soaks up that pressure, Harry Grant's going to come in like a ball of energy, and he'll no doubt have Queensland on the front foot within minutes of him getting onto the field. The Blues, on the other hand, are going to be relying on Reece Robson to play the entire 80 minutes or very much close enough to. Karen McInnes will do a job. He's been a hooker throughout his career, not in the last couple of years, but he certainly has been over the journey. He will do a job when required for that 10 or 15-minute break for Robson, but that's all it's going to be for Robson. And that means, on an energy front, Queensland are certainly going to have a big advantage in the ruck that New South Wales will be lacking. And if Reece Robson gets injured, God help New South Wales, they're in all sorts of trouble if that happens. But yeah, you'd have to imagine Queensland have the better selection strategy going into the game, and there's a lot of pressure on Robson to perform and play most of the 80 minutes.
Absolutely. So let's get into some predictions now. So I know you've got a little bit of that New South Wales bias in you, but we'll try and keep this objective. Where do you think the game will be won and lost?
Well, I do tend to think it'll be a pretty close game, as most Origins, well, some in the last couple of years have, but most tend to be pretty tight encounters. I think where it's going to be won and lost, certainly the Blues' outside edge defence, that's going to be prove a difference. But so often we've seen over the last couple of years, the team with more running metres from their back five wins the game. It's all about possession, it's all about territory, and it's all about setting up your kickers with the best positions to put your team on the front foot and score points. Obviously, we know Daly Cherry-Evans is a master of the organisational play and no doubt will continue to do that during game one. Therefore, I think it's going to be really important for the Blues to, as I said, win that advantage in the running metres. Last time the Blues won a series in 2021, we saw Tom Trbojevic, Latrell Mitchell, Brian To'o, James Tedesco. They all averaged over 200 metres per game. That is going to need to be the same story here for the Blues with Suaalii, Lomax, Dylan Edwards, Brian To'o, and Stephen Crichton all going big in the running metres. And I think you can see Michael Maguire has just lent into that a little bit with his team selection. He's picked guys who are going to make big metres. We know Dylan Edwards is one of the best in the competition. No disrespect to James Tedesco, but there's a reason Penrith have been premiers for the last 4 years, and it's been built off that back five. So Maguire's tried to follow that, and I think that's where the game will be won. Can they do that against a Queensland side who on paper probably are a little bit ahead of the Blues, sort of up in the air a bit, particularly once you factor in Cherry-Evans' kicking game. But I think that's where it'll be won. I think it'll be won in the back 5 metres and the kicking games.
Yeah, so the Queensland are a little bit ahead, but game one is being played in Sydney. So how do you think that will factor in?
Well, over the years, historically, certainly the Blues have a big advantage playing in Sydney. We've seen them win games they probably shouldn't have won in Sydney. But that said, I think that Sydney advantage sort of wasn't quite as strong during the Queensland dynasty that we've seen over the last, well, obviously there was a little break in the middle, but, we could argue it's still part of the same dynasty given they've won, so many series in the last decade and a half. Certainly if the Blues are going to win this series, they have to win game one. There's no chance that the Blues are going to go win in Melbourne and Brisbane back-to-back, so the Blues have to win game one. They need to use that home ground advantage. Yeah, remains to be seen, I suppose.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty stuff. So first try scorer.
I'm going to take Xavier Coates, the first try scorer.
Man of the match?
Well, I think this will give away my tip, but I am going Reece Walsh, man of the match.
And then your prediction?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going Queensland by 6.
Yeah. I think Queensland will take it as well. I'm not going to go too nitty-gritty into the try scorers and stuff, but yeah, I'll be back in Queensland. So thank you, Scott, for your preview. As always, you can catch everything to do with Origin at the Zero Tackle Origin Hub. I'll put a link in the description. Thanks, Scott. All the best.
Thanks, Phoenix.
No worries. And you can catch all the latest NRL news and Origin news at zerotackle.com, the #1 independent NRL news source.